Okay, guys. I hope you're having a great Monday morning. You'll be taking notes on this. I don't know if you're doing this just by yourself with headphones on or if you're doing it as a class. But you should have your note packet out. I would have a highlighter and something to write with as we're going into chapter 10, section 2, which is moving west. America, as you know, is starting to expand west. We originally started over there in the 13 colonies, and then we moved over the Appalachian Mountains all the way through what we consider the part of the Midwest when you're talking about Ohio and Indiana and Illinois. We got to the Mississippi River. Then we purchased that big swatch of land on the western side of the Mississippi River. I don't remember, the Louisiana Territory, right? And then the president at the time, I don't remember who, Thomas Jefferson, TJ. He sent two guys, Bill and Ted, on an excellent adventure all the way, Lewis and Clark, all the way across to check out and to look for that Northwest Passage. What they didn't find it because, you got it, it does not exist. Anyway, Americans are starting to move west, and that's what this is talking about. And you can probably guess the major type of transportation they're going to use, and of course that's the steamboat. Here we go. Our learning target is we're going to talk about these transportation routes and how steamboats are going to greatly improve our transportation system here in the United States at this time period. Okay? Now, in 1790, of course, the country, we just became a country in 1776. You know that, Declaration of Independence. And then the Constitution was written in 1787. So, in the Constitution, it states that Congress must do a count, an official count of the people. That's called a census. Everybody say census. Come on, not everybody said it. Everybody say census. Still not everybody said, come on, guys. Everybody say census. There you go, census. Now, it showed that 4 million people lived in the United States. 4 million. This is right after we became a country. And almost all of them lived to the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains. That's this side over here. Okay, so you can see all the population here. The darker the area, the more people that live there. This is the DC, Baltimore area. Okay, and that's New York City, etc. Our Boston area. New York City's down here. But this is where most of the people are going to live right after we became a country. And the Constitution states that the government has to take an official count of people, or a census, every 10 years. So here we go. This is what I want you to think about. If the first was in 1790, and the Constitution says we have to take a census every 10 years, when is the next census going to be? Hopefully you figured out it's every 10 years, and the first one was 1790. The next one would have been the year 1800, 1810, so it's always a year that ends in 0. So the next one would be 2030. Okay? That's the next official census, is in 2030. There's many ways they take a census, and I think it's going to be moved online. It's kind of online now. Your family, ask your parents the last time they filled out the census, which was in 2020. Okay? But we took, again, there was 4 million people, almost everybody on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains. But in 30 years, by 1820, you could see the number of people that moved across the Appalachian Mountains, and our population more than doubled in 30 years. So America's moving west. So you can see here they're moving into areas of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and even into Missouri. And this is all part of Louisiana Territory right here. So Americans are moving west. Now, to make it easier for Americans to move west, there are a couple of inventions. Now, if in your flex periods, first period and second period, you've already had this in your flex, that westward movement. Third period, you're going to have this today, and fourth period, you're going to have it tomorrow. Well, we're going to talk about the ways that it was easier for the people to move west. One of the ways was a turnpike or a toll road. A toll road is one where you pay to use that toll road. Now, many of us have traveled on toll roads as we have driven around the country. They're most popular over on the East Coast. The closest one is in Illinois. In fact, on the Washington, D.C. trip, we leave Minnesota, we go through Wisconsin, and as soon as we enter into Illinois, we start paying to drive on that road. So the people that use the road pay for the road. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So they started using these turnpikes or toll roads. And so when you get the money, then you use that to make the road better. That's the idea. They're also going to build these things called corduroy roads. Now, as you can see in the picture, a corduroy road is where you put logs down and then you drive over them. Now, you can only imagine that it's not going to be a very comfortable ride. However, usually during really, really wet ground, you could see a wagon here could get stuck in the mud. But if you lay these roads down, even though this is really bumpy and not really comfortable, your wagon won't get stuck. So this will make it easier to go across marshy areas. Those are called corduroy roads. Talk to your parents about if they have a pair of corduroy pants. Those were really popular when Mr. Fagg was in high school. We call them cords. But they were like these ridges. And then they built this thing called the National Road. And the National Road is going to go all the way from Baltimore all the way over into Illinois. That's quite a long road. As you can see in the picture here, they take rocks and they're going to break rocks into smaller rocks, sort of like a gravel road. And they're going to put it out there. But if you also look at there, you're going to see the sides of this have like a gutter. And the center of the road is going to be slightly higher. So when it rains, the water washes off the road into the gutters, into the channels, and off. And this will make it easier for people to travel. If it's easier to travel, more people will travel. And if you are moving out west, you're going to still want to get sources and supplies from the East Coast. And this makes it faster and easier to get those supplies. Here's a map of the National Road. You can see that it starts right here in Baltimore. And it's going to make its way just on the southern border of Pennsylvania and Maryland, all the way over past through Columbus, Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana, and end in a place called Vidalia, Illinois. Now, Vidalia, Illinois was going to be the capital of Illinois. It's not anymore. The capital is Springfield. But if you ever travel on this road, you'll see this sign right here. And that was called the National Road. Now what I want you to do is, everybody has to have a textbook on their desk. What you're going to do is, you're going to have some work. In your note packet, we should be now on page 3 at the bottom with this question: what were the advantages and disadvantages of river travel, during the 1800s? What I need you to do is, you need to make this T-chart. So go ahead and draw it in right over the steamboat picture, okay? And after you do this, what you're going to do is, you're going to put, of course, advantages and disadvantages at the top. Then on page 314, write that down. On page 314 in your textbook, you need to come up with advantages and disadvantages of river travel. So, what I would suggest is, if you want to do this by yourself, you can. If you want a partner, you can find one partner. When you're all done with notes here, come back to this. Find a partner. One of you do advantages, one of you disadvantages, and you share it. Okay? Got it? So do that, and then we'll talk about that. So, don't look. Okay, so you're going to come back to that a little bit later. Right now, what I want you to do is I want you to keep on the notes, and we're going to talk about these steamboats. Now, steamboats were developed. They weren't invented, but they were developed by a guy named Robert Fulton. And he's going to create the very first one here in the United States, and that's called the Claremont. Everybody say Claremont, okay? And that is going to solve one of the disadvantages. See if you can figure out which one. And it's able to travel upstream. There's the Claremont right there. And there it goes. It's traveling upstream. Pretty cool. Robert Fulton created the Claremont. Okay. And then a gentleman by the name of DeWitt Clinton led a group of people because he thought, if we're trying to transfer things, from New York City to the Great Lakes, you got to go up and around all the way up north. Where he said, if we can build a canal across New York, then we can make it easier. A canal is an artificial waterway. And so they're going to build this canal called the Erie Canal. And the Erie Canal, that's going to connect, you can see in here, the Hudson River all the way over to Lake Erie or the Great Lakes. That is going to greatly cut the time it takes to transport people and goods across the state of New York. To do this, they needed a series of locks. Now, locks are compartments which water levels are raised or lowered because land goes, up and down, elevation, hills. And so you need to raise or lower the water, and they're able to do this with these things called locks. And that's a picture of the Erie Canal drawn. And you could see that it's only big enough for like one ship to go through. Canals were so popular that literally within 30 years, 3,600 miles of canals are going to be built. Look at all of those, the red lines. Okay, the Erie Canal is right here on the map from Troy to Buffalo. But look at all the other ones that they built. If you come down here, look here, you could see that in Ohio, look how many miles. Indiana, Illinois. It's amazing how many miles was built in 30 years. Because all of these new waves of settlement are going on, people are moving out here and they're creating new states. Okay? The first wave of states began before 1800, and these were like Vermont, Tennessee, and Ohio. Don't write the words down. Write the abbreviations. Vermont is VT. Kentucky, KY. Tennessee is TN. And Ohio is OO. No, it's not OO. It's OH. Okay? And then a second wave is going to happen right around the 1820s. And that's going to be Indiana, IN. Illinois, IL. Mississippi, MS. Alabama, which is going to be AL. And finally, Missouri, my home state. And that's the Big Mo, Missouri. And pioneers that are going to settle, go all to these places. They want to settle by rivers and big lakes because then you can grow your food and it's easy to transport it. So pioneers settled in communities along the large rivers like the Ohio River, the Tennessee River, the Cumberland River, the Ohio River, the Missouri River, the Mississippi River, the Minnesota River, the Wisconsin River. They go by these large rivers. That's almost all cities are by rivers, okay? And that just tells you the same thing. Okay? We're done. Okay, so now you're going to spend the rest of the time, you're going to go back and do the advantages and disadvantages of river travel on page 314, and then the rest of the time you can work on your assignment. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I hope you have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Behave yourself.